on to talking to strangers, final group discussion, I guess.
Yes, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't.
Maybe it's Merkin Hour Part 2.
Merkin Hour Part 2.
We talked a lot about that last
Welcome
time.
to Merkin Hour. We're all wearing one, yes?
Let's change our weeklies to Merkin Mondays. We're all wearing one,
I
yes.
picked a blue one
Yes.
to match Kim. So
Thank you. I was like, you too?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Sarah. Go ahead. Talking to strangers.
No,
we're here
That's
for
it.
it.
We're in.
Yeah, does anybody want anything they want to jump into right away?
I have a couple things, so I can go right away if
Do it.
people are not.
Go.
Okay, so you know that thing? I can't remember what it's called, but it's that like human bias where you think that you know more about someone else than they might know about you.
Yeah, it's called
I
the
have that.
illusion
I
of
have that
asymmetric
100%.
insight.
Yeah,
The illusion of
I have
asymmetric
it.
insight.
I don't think it's an illusion. That's how bad I have it. Like,
That's great.
yeah, I think people could know me too, like different things, but I'm confident in my knowledge of what other people may not know about themselves. Like,
Yeah.
in spite of being told that it is an illusion, not for me. Like, that's how deep in the illusion I am.
Well, that's probably goes with your tarot card readings and the
I
idea
feel like
you,
that.
Yeah. That you have this like insightful look into people, but
It's tough being called out by Malcolm Gladwell though sometimes.
Oh,
Like,
I'm
you're
gonna
reading a
call
book
him
and you're
out.
like, man, that's me.
Yes, like that's
Yeah.
me 100.
Like, okay.
Okay, so no conversation for that
No,
one. Okay.
I like what I like is that everyone defaults to people telling the truth.
Not everyone. Don't forget about the
I know, it's
opposing
actually-
fool.
Disagreeable guy.
I'm totally a default the truth person though, because I'm always like,
I am
maybe.
too.
And I part of this I think like is my inner voice from like my mom in childhood, which she'd just be like, you know, maybe think about that person might be going through something. She was always like, maybe they're having a bad day or whatever. And I totally do the same thing too. Being like, oh, they can't possibly be just doing this because of me. Like they're probably something completely different. Everything's fine.
Like give them a benefit of a doubt.
the
Like,
benefit of the doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, but I love too in the book, like he said that it would be that sucks because yes, sometimes you're gonna get screwed, basically, but if you didn't live your life like that, then you're going to be the guy in the hermit, you know, the guy who's hiding in his house with a bunch of guns, who's afraid of everything.
Yeah.
So what is the better option? So we default to truth and we trust people. That's great. And then we get screwed once in a while versus living your life, always not trusting people. Like, I don't know. That would
Right. So it's like
worse
you
to
can't
me.
beat yourself up for being fooled from time to time. Because sometimes we're like, oh, why didn't I know that person was lying or whatever? And you think like sometimes we're hard on ourselves for not being able to tell that that person was deceiving us. But then he makes a good point. So you're being like you're saying, so you got deceived every once in a while, but you would be miserable if you spent maybe miserable, but you might be miserable if you spent your whole life assuming the other. Assuming more people, because the number of people who actually are deceiving is low.
Just trying to protect yourself. It's the same thing with
Trying to
love,
protect yourself.
right?
I was just
oh,
gonna
I
say
was in-
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Like, I can't speak for men, but I certainly see it a lot in girlfriends who default to truth on. They don't see what I would, from an outside perspective, see as big red flags in the early dating, because now maybe it's because their agendas are just to not be alone, or like I wonder, I'm sure both sexes do that, but I wonder if one sex does it more than the other, because I'd say, do you think there's more highly disagreeable men than women?
I don't think it's about disagreeableness. I think that it's about self-esteem. And lots of people who ignore red flags in a relationship, at the beginning of a relationship, is because they're looking for that relationship to make them feel worthy. And I think it's either gender, depending on where their self-esteem is. I could wager a guess that maybe women more because of society, right? Like,
yeah, I was going to say societally
set up in the way that it is.
fitting
You could be more
group mentality, maybe
vulnerable to
thinking,
that or something. But yeah, when people go into relationships looking for something from the other person that they can't give to themselves, that they should be giving to themselves, they're technically not in the most healthy position to enter a relationship. And hopefully like those,
Mhm.
go ahead, Sarah.
I also think when you see red flags, you see it from, I don't know how well you know the person they're dating, but one of the things in the book I thought was interesting is that before they met people that were lying, they were like, oh, the data shows clearly liar. But then they met them or talked to them on the phone and actually interacted with them rather than just in the research of the behavior or the data. When they actually met the person, all of a sudden they defaulted to, truth, that they believe them, even though they're like, all this data says they're liar. Like that guy who did the Wall Street thing, that the data was like, clearly he's lying and he's doing all these shady things.
But he's
and then
such
they
a
met
cool
him, like,
guy or something. Yeah, he's
But
so
knowing
he's so
them-
chill.
Yeah, knowing them
Right,
makes you worse at being able to tell whether they're
right.
Yeah.
So they didn't pull
Acceptive
all
or
the
not.
money away from him. They kept some of it there. And they're like, why did
Just
you
in
do
case
that?
he
Like,
did have a magical math equation.
Yeah.
that he
If he
that he
does.
couldn't explain.
Well, he couldn't explain.
Right. So
But-
I think that might happen too if a friend is telling you things that are happening in their relationship. If you've never met the guy, you might be like, "Pfft, clear red flags, but they're defaulting the truth. You're
Also a
not,
bunch
because
of-
you're the outsider, right?
There's also a bunch
You're
of
just-
other variables that like affect the way that people receive people. Like there's studies in court cases where, if you're deemed attractive, you're more likely to get a lesser sentence. And I mean, this is part of what I want to talk about in this book too. Like, I don't think that he gives enough credit to how much race affects things and how much like oppression in general, specifically for women and minorities. There's two major parts of this book where I'm like, I get what he's saying, but I feel like he's necessarily ignoring a major component of why this is. And
Yeah,
so
do you think that was an active choice to not touch that? Because he touched some
I mean, I
pretty
feel
highly
like
racy and racial
Yeah, I mean,
issues.
he does talk about what Sandra Bland and at the beginning and the end, and he talks about like when they're talking about the court cases, about how somebody from a different country might react differently in a court, and a judge might look at them and go, oh well, because they're not showing any remorse, it means that they're not sorry. But maybe someone from wherever they're from, that being that stoic is the role that they're supposed to be playing in this situation. But because in, say, America, we think that you need to show certain emotion on your face, and so we touched a bit on that about
I think he did bring it up, but it wasn't like I don't think
Didn't
he
feel
wasn't,
comfortable,
beating
like,
you over
when
the
he
head
was
with it or anything.
arguing for Brock Turner and the rape case, and he was like making his points like totally based in like
that
equality.
was a tough chapter. That was a
Right.
tough chapter because he was like, okay, like this is obviously a big emotional subject for many people, but I'm just going to look at it in a cold and calculated way, and that I think that made that chapter hard to read because
I was gonna say, I said this in my PJs. I didn't see this book coming. I don't know what I thought it was gonna be, but I found it really hard to read in the sense is like all this. I was like getting really depressed. It's like the world's so fucked up, like so much bad stuff because it's all. Oh, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was like, especially after off the back of the last book, I was like, fuck. Come on, Robin.
No.
Come on, what does the Robin know?
what does Robin know? Is it traumatic or is it not?
Yeah, I was just like, I didn't expect this book to be upsetting. I expected my book to be upsetting. I didn't expect this book to be upsetting.
Yeah, I'm the same with you,
like
Leah.
Blink or Tipping Point or Outliners. Like me neither. I had no idea it was going to be like talking about things like, race, like people being pulled over and murdered and put in jail, and then suicide, and then raping, and the whole thing. I was like, what?
Did anyone else do the Audible as well? Because, or whatever, audiobook? So he does it like his podcast. And it's amazing because it's like listening to his podcast and there's music and he uses the actual audio tape from a lot of these court cases and the Sandra Bland actual audio. So it's,
I don't know if I could have listened to
it was really upsetting.
I don't think I
It
could.
was so, oh my God, it's
Reading
really
it was
good.
really
What a way to
hard.
make an impression though, like so the book is more impactful that way because you're getting
It was
obviously
so
more
good. Yeah.
But I feel like, so with the Brock Turner case, he's making his cold calculated point. And like, for me, I feel like essentially he's like, neither one of these people is guilty, or they both are, because of drunkenness and whatever. And I feel like that kind of a assessment necessarily ignores society and how men are given permission to approach women. You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole gender dynamic that I don't think that he acknowledges, doesn't do it justice, because he doesn't acknowledge gender roles and like the history of women's oppression and all of that stuff. So like, that's what bothered me about that chapter. Like, I got what he was saying. It's true. Yes, the human brain, a certain amount of alcohol, whatever. But like, I don't know. That's why it didn't sit right with me, because I was like, there's a piece of discussion missing from this chapter. And I feel like it's on purpose, because the simplistic point that he's trying to pull through the book, which is like, we default to truth and we assume transparency, and this is why we can't, like, this is why these things kind of happen. And that's not the only reason why, I guess.
That was the chapter about alcohol, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That one I felt like was totally out of place. I totally agree. That felt like a different book to me. Like, you were talking about all this stuff, and then there was that, and it felt, I don't know, it just felt weird. Like that. I really liked the book, but that particular chapter I learned, it was very interesting, but it just didn't feel like the same book.
I wonder if one of the reasons that all of us were just like, no, is because we're women.
I know.
In the audiobook, he included clips from that, her name escapes me, but the young lady, the victim.
They called her Emily Doe in the book.
And they use audio clips of her in court, and her closing statement, which is heart-wrenching. Like, absolute, like, don't do it if you're upset by this book, because or wait till you're ready to listen to it. It is just like her making it say, like, like how you changed my life, and I can't do anything by myself anymore, and I never feel safe, and I have a boyfriend, and it jeopardized. Like, it was just so eloquent and horrifying that I felt like it was really it really came across, because I listened to that entire chapter, I didn't read it, came across really pushing her story forward. It's so interesting. Now I have to go back and read that chapter to see how it's perceived differently. But don't listen to it if it made you
instead of listening to it.
Yeah,
maybe,
because that one I had switched totally to audio. It was so good, I practically didn't touch paper on this one. Well, I did a little. I touched a little bit of paper.
What kind of paper, Leah?
Yeah, that money. I don't know. Yeah.
I meant like this kind of paper.
That's what I was gonna say.
You're talking about too.
I was gonna
That's
say,
where I was
but then I
going.
was like, I don't know. I don't know how that'll come across. Apparently, this making it rain in a strip club, I thought was a better choice. I don't know what
Than
to
a little
say about
marijuana.
That. Yeah, exactly.
Book interrupted.
My interruption is I'm at work. I went to go park in this like extra parking lot, except for it's just mud, and I've got my tiny car, and I got spectacularly stuck in the mud. But being who I am, I cobbled together some stuff in the car. I've had 2 towels, thank goodness it's winter, because I have towels in the car for like kids being dirty, and I just like laid them under the wheels and then rocked the car, got it forward enough, got the towels, did that a whole bunch of times. My car is covered in mud. Like, on the top of my car, from like the wheels spinning and flinging mud in the air, I'm covered in mud. My hands, my boots are disgusting, the floor of my car. Oh my God, I knew the minute I pulled in there, like, oh, I better turn around. This is bad news. And it wasn't even deep yet, so, whew, an exciting start to the day. My heart's beating. I'm a little late for a meeting, but I just had to share that with you ladies.
Book interrupted.
I really like the CIA part with like, I like the Cuba just humiliating the US, like that whole thing, like the like calculated like thing, and then they made a movie. Like, I was just like, wow, that's like next level. We're gonna humiliate you. Like, it's just like, that took some planning, and just like, wow, I love that. I laughed out loud about that.
That was another thing too. Like, I default to truth originally, but it doesn't take me a bunch of stuff to, You know what I mean? Like he kind of described it as like we default to truth until there's an overwhelming amount of evidence or something to do the other. I default to truth, and then if there's any whiff of anything, then I turn into that guy that locks himself up with the guns until I can gather my evidence. Like I'll always like I can be dualistic, I guess, because I can be like, yeah, it's fine, like we're good, but I remember that time that this thing happened and it's flagged for me. So anything else in that area, like I'm gathering on, I'm consciously gathering, I guess, right? And I think that when he was describing it, maybe I misinterpreted it, but it felt like it was like unconscious, default to truth, default to truth, default to truth, like let's explain things away, like benefit of the doubt, whatever. And I'm more about like I just need to have the tangible evidence, right? So I'm no longer defaulting to truth. I might appear like I'm still the same old whatever, but if the tangible evidence makes itself tangible, then I will go, like, you know what I mean? Like,
but maybe that's like a combination of like the illusion of asymmetrical, what's it called? Whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a combination of that, and also maybe like we're all kind of a little bit of a spectrum of the just like normal person and then the holy fool.
Totally.
Like, right? Maybe you just have a little bit more holy fool, or like,
right.
Or maybe again, this is like, oh, I understand what you did there, and I'm gathering evidence now, or whatever. Like,
right.
maybe
that was really subtle, but I noticed.
Because there were people in the book that were determined that certain people were liars, but when they had to take it to like the greater society, like they might say, there's something fishy with that person I'm watching, but to actually take an action so that person has like it's recommended, right? They have accountability for their actions, or there's an investigation that you're backing it with your assumptions. That's when people kind of back down. Like, do you know what I mean? Like with the CIA, with that lady from Cuba, like they interviewed her and they knew that she was shady, but they were like, they still didn't want to push it because they weren't 100%, even though the one guy was like, she's shady, he didn't push it any further because no one else was on board. Do you know what I mean? It's like I feel like the book was also saying you need other people to back if you're going to go against the default to truth. I think you need more courage from other people that also are not defaulting to the truth in that instance or something. Do you know what I mean? Like people said it, but nobody would go out on a limb by themselves with their assumptions unless they were hiding in the forest with their guns, right?
It's like all of us looking at you be like, this is weird, right? Does anyone else think that this person is lying? Right? But then you ask somebody, you might be like, I think they're lying. They're like, do you think they're lying? Do you?
I wonder if that has to do with Homo sapiens, like how that we're like
back to sapiens.
Social.
Well, I was thinking back to Untamed too. Like when all the guys are like, yes, I'm hungry. I know what I want. And all the girls were like, are we hungry? I don't know. Are we eating anyone? And so it could be like in that too. Like we need to seek validation and confirmation. And it's probably like Mare said, also on a spectrum on how like much you're like, I know that they're lying. I'm not going to say, does anyone else think this is weird? Or, you know, like maybe like you tend to be a person that wants to believe the best in people or whatever, right? Like
in the book, the people who stood up and said these people are lying are the ones that were ostracized from society. So that kind of like goes back to the sapiens things and what you're saying, all of what you're saying.
And like I was going to say, I think it's more dangerous on the other side of this coin, where if people maybe falsely believe something about someone and a group mentality is like, whoa, and like they're, you know what I mean? Like, but there's a group enhancement, right? Like the reaction, whether it's like accurate or inaccurate, is enhanced by the group's participation, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
We're just so interesting, us sapiens.
If you've enjoyed these video highlights, listen to the full episode on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to be notified when new episodes are published. Find out more by going to www.bookinterrupted.com.
On Book Interrupted.
Never forget, every child matters.